listening to LSU Daily with Matt Musso, your home for all things LSU sports.
Off and running here in another edition of LSU Daily. Welcome in. Thank you for being here. LSU drops a tough one, to say the least, over the weekend in College Station, 38-23. Coincidentally enough, that's the same final score that A&M defeated LSU by in 2022, the last time the Tigers made the trip over there to College Station. Plenty to break down in the ball game, whether it be LSU's lack of balance and execution on offense, whether it be Marcel Reed coming into the game late, I should say midway through the third quarter, and just completely taking over. Some really interesting numbers behind that, and some really interesting comments that surround that whole, development as well from players on the team and the head coach. So we're going to get into obviously all of that, and to say that I'm excited to do it is that'd be a lie. That was a gut punch in every sense for anyone involved in that game on the LSU side on Saturday night. But we'll recap it and we'll go through all of it here over the next 25 or so minutes. So go ahead, like, share, subscribe. Please subscribe. Follow me on social media as well. It's greatly appreciated at Musso Matthew on Twitter. You can find me on Facebook and on Instagram as well. Instagram at MatthewMusso1. All of that greatly appreciated as well. Okay. I want to get this out of the way first before we get into the game itself and the offense and Nuss and the defense and Marcel Reed and all of those things. I want to get this out of the way first. LSU season is not over. LSU has everything in front of it that it still aspires for. You are 6-2 and 3-1 in the SEC. What happened is you lost your margin for error. That is gone. Totally gone now. Would you have loved to have won that game and had the Alabama game to play with as margin for error? Sure. That would have been awesome. That would have been ideal, actually. You don't have that luxury. But what you do have is an opportunity to achieve what you want to achieve as long as you win out. LSU could still make it to Atlanta. They'd need a little bit of help there. But for the college football playoff, win out. If LSU does that, they will be 10-2 and 7-1 in the SEC. If you were 7-1 in the SEC, you're not getting left out. And yeah, there's 3 teams in front of you that also have 1 loss. But Georgia and Tennessee still have to play each other. That's going to hang another loss on one of them. So at most, you'd end up with 3 7-1 teams in the league. So if anyone tries to tell you that LSU season is over, do not listen to them because they're wrong. What is different is you now just have no margin for error. And does LSU have things to clean up in order to get to that 7-1? Sure. But you have your bye week, your second bye week now. You can rest, recover, self-scout, get some things cleaned up before Alabama comes here on November the 9th. Just wanted to get that out of the way first. Now, there are a lot of cliches in sports, right? We hear them all the time. One of them is tale of two halves. And while it's cliche, I don't think there is a game that has ever been played that applies to more perfectly. Y'all, those two teams played in 2 different games in one on Saturday night. We all sat down and watched 2 different games in one on Saturday night. And sure, you could say there were signs that the tide could turn in the game, that LSU was letting a home team, a good home team, hang around in a raucous environment, and they couldn't put them away. And that's fair. We'll watch that. I mean, we'll recap that. We'll go through that. We'll talk about it. The other thing that's very fair and very true is LSU could not have been in more firm control of the football game despite all of that. And then they just imploded, specifically on offense. And that's something that has to happen for that scenario to play out the way it did on Saturday. The other thing that has to happen is uncharacteristic mistakes. And those happened on special teams. And I know Brian Kelly after the games talking about, it's not the first time this has happened this year. We're going to have to stop it. It's never going to happen again. Okay, fair. I mean, the one that really comes to mind first is the debacle at the end of the Nichols, first half against Nichols with the field goal. But outside of that, LSU special teams as a whole has been really pretty good. But you missed 3 field goals. That stunk. Peyton Todd had a long punt of 38. That's not good enough. You had the botched snap on the field goal that cost you points. Like, your special teams was as bad as it has been all year. Like, the stuff you saw from special teams on LSU Saturday night is akin to what you saw throughout the entire 2022 season. That's the level of stink that was. And, again, BK can say what he wants. I get it. And, yes, there have been a few head-scratching moments. But by and large, the special teams this season had improved tenfold, and that was uncharacteristic. And stuff like that has to happen for it to just completely go off the rails. Let's go through this a little bit in the first half, and just to really demonstrate how in control of the game LSU was. I sat here and told y'all on Friday that I thought LSU's defense would actually be the difference in the game. And that was not something that I ever thought I would have said 4 weeks ago. And in the first half, LSU's defense was the difference in the football game. Because you did have those missed opportunities offensively there, but you allowed 7 points. You forced a turnover. They were flying around with great energy. They were disciplined at the same time as doing that, and they dominated that Texas A&M team in the first half. Dominated them. And it played out exactly like we thought. They stopped the run in the first half, and Connor Wegman could do nothing because he's not good. I'm sorry. He's not. I'm sure the kid works really hard. I'm sure he's a great person. He's a limited quarterback at this level of play. The sample size has got to be large enough now, and you saw that late when they put in Marcel Reed, and there's just no, looking at the way that flowed, there is no justifiable reason, and there really wasn't anyway, but there's just no justifiable reason for ever putting that kid back on the bench after he played in started those 3 games and played as well. I get it. You're not supposed to lose your job for injury, and that's fine. Like, sure. That kid makes this team a legit contender. He is dynamic. He is awesome. Anyway, got off on a tangent there. But you stopped the run, and Connor Wegman couldn't beat you. He could not beat you. Exactly what we all thought. And you dominated that first half. So the teams trade punts. Then LSU goes on that long drive, and they get the field goal. 86-yard drive, 11 plays, field goal. And look, yes, it would have been lovely and perfect to finish that drive off on a touchdown. But, man, I thought that was a big statement from LSU's offense early that we take this ball down the field on you. And you thought to yourself, touchdowns are going to come. But they just show they take that ball down the field on you. And you're up 3-0. And then on the very next drive, LSU forces the fumble. It was Sage Ryan punching the ball out of Le'Veon Moss's hands. Jordan Gilbert grabbed the recovery. And it set LSU up with fantastic field position at the Texas A&M 21. And at that point, all the momentum started to shift to LSU side, and they took the shot play to Mason Taylor on the first play. Loved that call. It was a great throw by Nuss, and Taylor just couldn't hold on to it. Okay, LSU didn't let that, they didn't let that drag them down, and 3 plays later, they're in the end zone, and you're up 10-0. And again, the air has been completely sucked out of that building. You have, in 2 out of your 3 drives, you have put up points, including one where you drove the length of the field on that defense, and then you forced a fumble from their best player on offense. LSU tweeted. I tweeted after that game, after that score, that LSU looked very comfortable in a tough environment on the road, and they did. The defense was flying around, and the offense was responding with points. A&M, to their credit, they were able to get the run game going a little bit on their next drive. Le'Veon Moss led it off with that 25-yard run, his long of the night, and they're able to punch it in for 7 and punctuate that. And at that point, the crowd's getting back into it. And then LSU goes on a bit of a drive. They get stopped. This was this was rough. Because LSU had converted 2 3rd and longs on this drive. You had the 3rd and 10. Then you were pushed back for a false start, so it went to 3rd and 15, but you hit Kyron Lacey for 33 yards, and you convert that one. You end up in another 3rd and long at 3rd and 7, and you go right back to Kyron Lacey for 21 more yards. Then LSU ends up in 3rd and 13. And they run Caden Durham right up the middle for no gain. And I thought that play call stunk. You're playing for a field goal there after you had momentum on 3rd down in that drive. If you're trying to just pop a seam or whatnot, okay, fine, but no. Not on a drive where you had converted 3rd and 15 and 3rd and 7. You have to put the ball in the air. You have to go for it. I thought that was playing a little timid. And ultimately what happens is Damian Ramos misses the 48-yard field goal. That's one chance that LSU had to extend their lead and didn't. But you credit your defense, them being the difference in the game. They get a stop the very next drive. Y'all, it took A&M 9 plays to go 11 yards. Now, yes, there were penalties involved in there and whatnot, but 9 plays to go 11 yards, and you forced the punt. And then LSU puts together their best offensive drive of the day. They go 90 yards in 58 seconds on 3 plays. That was the long pass over the middle to Aaron Anderson, and I'm going to get to the over the middle stuff here momentarily. But that was a great great play design, and the A&M safety took a bad angle, and when he missed Anderson, there was nobody left in the middle of the field, and everybody was trailing him, and you're just not going to catch that kid in the open space like that. He has too much speed. So then you're up 10-0. You completely stonewall them again, -1 yard on their next drive, punt. LSU goes on another drive. This time on 3rd and 10, 3rd and long. They do attempt the pass. It's incomplete. You have to kick another field goal. Damian Ramos misses that other field goal. That's 2 chances you've had to extend your lead and couldn't. At that point, it would be 23-7. If LSU's, and you would go into the half up 16, and this game would have a totally different feel. You force a punt on A&M's first drive of the third quarter. LSU punts it right back. That's 3 times that LSU had a chance to extend their lead and couldn't. You force another punt. You get the ball back. Garrett Nussmeier throws the first interception, and it was really bad. There's no way around that. And like I said, we're going to get into the balance of the offense here momentarily, but that was really bad. That's 4 chances that LSU had to extend their lead and couldn't. You give A&M the short field off of that. Your defense has been awesome all night, but now you're asking them to defend approximately 8 yards. And that's when you first saw Marcel Reed, and he runs it in for 8 yards. Touchdown A&M. LSU gets the football back again, and they fumble. Well, I shouldn't say they fumble. Well, no, technically they did, but that was the botched snap. That was the botched snap on the field goal. So that's 5 chances that LSU had to extend their lead and couldn't. And then A&M goes 60 yards and takes the lead. LSU would throw another interception. A&M would go up 2 scores. And that's it. The game was over. At that point, it was clear you weren't going to be able to stop Marcel Reed, and you had no answer for that. Before I get on my soapbox there, let's talk about the balance on the offense. Brian Kelly did after the game. Here you go.
I mean, I'll have to watch the film and go through it. I mean, these are, obviously interceptions that led to, points, and it's easy to point those out as important times in the game. But, we had an opportunity to rally on defense, and we couldn't do that, right? And look, you can't make a living with 33 yards rushing, and we've got to help Garrett out, quite frankly. We've got to give him a more balanced offense. And he can't be that guy that's got to throw for 365 yards. There has to be more balance within the offense.
Okay. Couple things here. Number one, talking about the turnovers that turned into points. Miss me with the whole we had a chance to rally on defense there. No, stop that. Stop. They were set up with an 8-yard. They had to go 8 yards on the first interception. And yeah, okay, well, you had that great stop, after the turnover against Ole Miss, and okay, whatever. That was awesome. That does not happen very often in football. That team had to go 8 yards. You're not rallying on defense there very often. And the second time, they had to go 26 yards. Both those damn drives basically started in the red zone. Miss me with the rally on defense stuff. That is an impossible spot to put that unit in after they've been on the field all game long saving your ass. Stop. No. And look, I get it. The defensive players, they'd probably tell you, yeah, we should have come up with the stops. And I expect them to say that. But no. That is so tough. Now, the balance on offense, yeah, I'm with you. What did I talk about all week when looking at this game? I compared it to Ole Miss and what Ole Miss was able to do to LSU. They could stop the run and play coverage. And it really gave Nussmeier problems early in that game, and then he figured it out late. This was the inverse. But they did the same thing. Y'all, Garrett Nussmeier threw the ball 51 times against Ole Miss. He threw it 50 times against A&M. LSU ran the ball 24 times against Ole Miss. They ran it 22 times against A&M. No, you can't make a living that way. No, that doesn't work. You have to be able to run the football. And it is bitterly disappointing that this team can't do it consistently. And I will throw the consistently out there because they did have a great success against Arkansas, which is a very good front. They're not as good as Texas A&M's. They're not as good as Ole Miss. And yeah, you need to block it better. You have missed assignments there. You need your running backs to have better vision and hit the correct hole. You need all of those things. All those things went wrong for you on Saturday night. But the other thing you need is a better rhythm of play calling because LSU did have run looks. Again, just like in Ole Miss, they did have run looks and they threw the ball into them. So that's where I get really frustrated when talking about this conversation here in late October when Brian Kelly has been pressed about the running game since week 1 against USC when they weren't good. And he's basically hand-waved it away. Really up until recently. His thing was always, well, look, we were seeing a lot of, pass looks. And if they give us run looks, we'll run the ball. Well, where the hell is that at? Yes, your offensive line has things to work on in the run game. Yes, your receivers and tight ends have things to work on in the running game. Your running backs have things to work on in the running game. But man, you got to be able to put them in some type of advantageous position, especially when you're running the ball for 1 yard per carry like you did against Texas A&M. No, that's not sustainable. And yes, you do have to help Garrett Nussmeier out. And yeah, I'm sure he does feel like the weight is on his shoulders and he has to go out there and carry the offense and make all the plays. Now, that being said, he has to make better decisions in doing that. There's just no other way around it. Y'all, that first interception was brutal. And what made it even more brutal was the spot in the game that it was in, where LSU, I mean, it's 3rd down and 2 at your own 21. You're up 10 points. Just throw the ball away and punt and let your defense have the long field, a spot where they had been great in. Would it have mattered because Marcel Reed was coming into the game? I don't know. But we'll never know. Garrett has now had enough under his belt, and he's shown the resistance in certain points in other games. He just has to be able to show it there. You have to throw the football away. And that was a horrendous interception because you were up 10 on the road in the second half, midway through the third quarter, and you could have given him a long field. Instead, you throw it up for grabs. It's intercepted, return 27 yards down to your 8-yard line. And that swung the momentum, and you were never able to get it back. And then equally as disappointing was the second interception. He had to try to make a long throw, outside the hash, from one hash mark to outside the numbers, and it was covered. And again, it's just a head-scratching throw. It's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Now, the other thing I will get to with that is LSU has to use the middle of the field more. And I get it. Late in that game, you're trying to, have sideline stuff so you can get out of bounds, try to move the field out, whatever. LSU the last 3 weeks has used the hash marks and the numbers too much. Your most successful offensive play all night was to Aaron Anderson over the middle. It was open a lot. A&M left the middle of the field open. LSU's got to start taking advantage of that. You had one of those clutch third down conversions we talked about to Kyron Lacey, was over the middle. It's there for the taking. Take it. You have that in your bag. That's where your best, that's where your personnel's best, is in the short to intermediate stuff. I thought LSU really took some shots in this game. Look, I love that. And they missed a few of them, too. And others were there and just not hauled in. He had Chris Hilton miss time a jump twice. He's rusty. That's why you'd have loved to be able to get him back a little sooner, but it didn't work out. He had to recover properly. He was rusty, whatever. Mason Taylor couldn't haul in the 21-yarder off the fumble. That's a lot's made about Garrett's percentage on those deep shots. I thought he threw a lot of very good deep balls, and they weren't hauled in. I know everybody wants to blame him for the implosion, the collapse, the meltdown, whatever you want to call it on offense. Fact of the matter, it was all of them. Your protection wasn't as good in the second half. That place was going bonkers, and they finally were able to knock you off rhythm. Mike Elko disguised the defense. He talked about it mid-game when Holly Rowe interviewed him. They did a better job disguising and confusing LSU's offensive line and Garrett Nussmeier. So your protection wasn't as good. You couldn't run the ball a lick all night, as we touched on. It was a team effort on offense for that to go as awry as it did. Now, Marcel Reed. Marcel Reed. they weren't prepared, clearly. Here was Brian Kelly after the game if they were preparing for the possibility of Marcel Reed.
We have a plan for the running quarterback. I don't know that we executed at the level that we needed to. I think if 2020 is such that should we have spent more time on it, sure looks that way. But I don't believe that there was a sense that we weren't capable of doing it after feeling really good about the running quarterback that we faced last week at Arkansas, because we had a similar plan. So we got to go back and double down on our preparation for the running quarterback.
So that's Brian Kelly. We have a plan for a running quarterback. Maybe we should have looked at it more, prepared for it more. It sure looks that way. Hindsight 2020, all that stuff. Here's Greg Penn after the game on if they prepared for Marcel Reed.
Well, it's hard to say right now, but we didn't really prepare for it, honestly. We didn't think that he was going to come in the game. So, him coming in the game kind of caught us off guard, I would say. We didn't really know what runs they were going to run and things like that. So, they were doing that kind of just, open the game up for them in terms of what they were doing on offense.
Oh, that's a very different story than the head coach just told, isn't it? We didn't really prepare for it. We didn't expect him to come in the game. We didn't really know what runs they were going to run. Let's go back to Friday, shall we, on this show. I would not be surprised if A&M played two quarterbacks. Marcel Reed was really good for them in his 3 starts when Wegman was out. And that adds another rushing element to the offense. It would not shock me at all if Marcel Reed has some type of package in this game, because the rushing attack is going to be so key for A&M. I don't get a lot of things right. I nailed that. Now, the difference there is I thought it'd be some type of package. I didn't expect them to totally bench Connor Wegman, but I absolutely expected to see number 10 on the field. And here's why. And again, we laid all this out on Friday, but here's why. Because the conversation we had throughout the week was what? We talked about it at the very beginning of this show. Texas A&M had to run the football. They weren't going to beat you throwing the football. They had to run the ball. And if LSU could stop them, they'd have to find another way to run the freaking ball. And that other way is the quarterback who was awesome for them in 3 starts and should have never been put back on the bench. And I've seen it from a lot of LSU fans. Well, why would they prepare for the backup quarterback? Connor Wegman had been playing with... Because teams break tendency in big games in order to throw something at the opponent that they're not ready for, which LSU clearly wasn't, in order to win. That's why. Because you got up huge against Missouri. Because Le'Veon Moss was able to run the ball down their throat. You didn't need Marcel Reed in that game. That's a good thing for Texas A&M. Mississippi State is the worst damn team in the SEC. Auburn would beat Mississippi State. State's that bad. A&M forced a bunch of turnovers. No, they didn't run the ball great in the game, but they forced turnovers. Their defense was just in control. You didn't need him to beat the worst team in the SEC. You know who you need him to beat? A team that is damn near equal to you in every way. A team that dominated you in the first half. Dominated you in the first half to the tune. Here you go. To the tune of 147 total yards, 98 yards on the ground. That's what LSU did to Texas A&M in the first half. They dominated them defensively. Yeah, you need that. Connor Wegman completed less than 50% of his passes in the ballgame. Yo, Marcel Reed ended up being Texas A&M's leading passer. He threw 2 passes. All of that could be foreseen. So I'm not here to deal in hindsight as 2020. For me, it ain't, and I just played you the proof. And no, I'm not sitting here saying, oh, hey, look, Musso knows more than coaches. No, I don't know more than coaches. But that's why this is frustrating to me. Hell, I thought of it. Why the hell didn't they think enough of it? Like, that is what bothers me about this. It's clear. It was clear to me that was a major possibility in the game, because if LSU was able to stop the running backs, A&M was going to have to find a way to run the football. And the way to do that is Marcel Reed, especially when he hasn't been seen in 2 weeks. Yeah, that lulls you to sleep, and it allows you to break tendency. It was great by Mike Elko. It was great by Colin Klein. It was bad on LSU's part, where you have a player coming out and saying, we didn't think he was going to come into the game. So yeah, you might have a plan for running quarterback. How much did you go through it? And that's the thing, too. I'm not sitting here telling you that LSU should spend their entire week of prep on the backup quarterback. But this is a guy who has played. It is on film. You have the evidence here. It'd be totally different if that was the first time anyone had ever seen Marcel Reed. But the fact is, it wasn't. He played in 3 games. It's on film, and you have to prepare some bit for that. Not the whole week, sure. Spend the last 5 minutes or the last 10 minutes of practice every day on it, though, just so the guys know where to be. LSU had no clue where to be when Marcel Reed was in there, and that's why it was so evident that the preparation just wasn't there. Because when LSU has prepared for running quarterbacks recently, like Taylon Green, like a Jackson Dart, like Gio Lopez, they shut them down. That's why I look at this and see Alabama coming in a week, in 2 weeks, and everybody's like, oh, Jalen Milroe's just going to run over. No, I don't think he is, because LSU knows what Jalen Milroe is going to do. Blake Baker, you're giving him 2 weeks to prepare for a running quarterback. That should be shored up. I think enough of Blake Baker. He's a great defensive coach. The problem is they didn't prepare enough for it. The starting middle linebacker on the team told you that. That's bitterly disappointing to me. It really is. I think it's a huge miss. Because if it's that blatant to a guy like me who just sits here and talks into a microphone, that is a legit possibility, why is it not to that coaching staff? We didn't think he'd come into the game. That is a brutal quote. Well, let me say, actually, it's a great quote because it lends a lot of insight and it's very honest. It's a quote that casts a brutal light on the operation this past week. So you'll get to work. You'll go fix it. As we said at the top, their goals are still in front of them. We'll have to look around the league, though, as well, and hope for some other one-loss teams to drop. You get one more loss on Texas or Tennessee, and you went out, you're going to be sitting pretty for the college football playoff. So, regroup on your bye. Go win out. We'll have plenty more for you here on LSU Daily this week as LSU goes through their bye. Looking forward to it. Please subscribe. Please share. All of that stuff greatly appreciated. Follow me on social media and be here next time for more on LSU Daily.